Good afternoon, everybody. It is Face Value episode 15. I hope that you are having a fantastic day. It is, at least here in Marshall, Illinois, it is completely beautiful, beautiful outside. So if you haven't been outside and you live in the area, hey, do your best. Try to get outside if you can. Because tomorrow's supposed to be not quite as great, but hey, it is springtime. Spring is springing, and it's just, man, it's so good to be alive and to see sunlight and to experience warmth again. Winter is far too long here. And man, if you watch this and you are in Zion, where I was before I came to Marshall, winter is way too long there. About 4 months too long in Marshall. Not Marshall, in Zion. Probably 2 months too long in Marshall. Anyway, so good to be on here. I'm going to jump in to John chapter 8. And, you know, we're coming straight out of this passage in John chapter 7, verse 53 through 8:11, which many of the older manuscripts don't have. And so when you read John chapter 8, verse 12, you pretty much you have a decision to make, which is, do I read this as this happens after John chapter 8, 1 through 11, or do I read this as part of that same conversation that Jesus was having at the end of John chapter 7? And you can decide that for yourself. I mean, it's up to you. You know, God knows either way what's right and what's not right. So we jump into John chapter 8. It would at least seem like he is still around the same group of people that he had been talking to at the end of chapter 7, who wanted to kill him, who were trying to trap him, who were trying to ensnare him with their questions. And Jesus speaks. That's the them in verse 12. Jesus spoke to them again. And what does Jesus say to them this time? Jesus says, and you probably heard this, I am the light of the world, which is a huge statement. It is a thread that John pulls through the Gospel of John as he's writing this letter about Jesus Christ and about the good news that Jesus is the King and the King has arrived. And he's saying he is the light of the world. And what was said in the beginning? He said, let there be, and hopefully you said it or thought it, light. Let there be light, because you can't see without the light. And Jesus is walking among people on the earth, and he's saying, I'm the light that you can't see without. I am the light of the world. I'm the way that you have vision. I'm the way that you can see truth. I'm the way that you will see God and that you will know God and that you will, not to borrow a Buddhist term, but that you will be enlightened, that who God is will be illuminated to you. And he says, I am the light of the world. Anyone who follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. So those are powerful words. Those aren't the words of just a mere prophet that's saying, hey, God's doing great things and he's using me to do great things. No, those are the words of someone who's claiming to be the Messiah. And he's not the first one to claim to be the Messiah. He's not the only one that's come along and said, yeah, I am the Savior. He's not the only one. And so it's important for us to remember that whenever they hear Jesus say these words, some people are penetrated to the core of who they are. And Vicky, now you're throwing me off if nobody else is having buffering issues. But anyway, if you are having buffering issues, make sure you come back and you watch it. You just watch it on YouTube later. But anyway, and so he's not just claiming to be somebody. He's claiming to be the somebody. And that's bold. It's either bold or it's ridiculous, right? And so then it says, so the Pharisees said to him, you're testifying about yourself. Because you're testifying about yourself, your testimony is not valid. You're testifying about yourself, so your testimony is not valid. What's going on there? They're saying, if you're the only one talking about you, then it doesn't matter. If you're the only one talking about you, then who cares? Same thing today. I mean, if you're the only one talking about you, you're the only one talking about what's going on in your life, then it's like, okay, so you think you're a big deal, but who else thinks you're a big deal? And Jesus who he's got other people that are talking about him. But Jesus says, even if I testify about myself, my testimony is true because I know where I came from and where I'm going. Once again, this is a claim that he's saying, I don't need your help. Even if nobody ever said it, it wouldn't change who I am because he is the one that spoke to Moses through the fiery bush, the I am that I am. That's who he is. And so he says, my testimony is true because I know where I came from and I know where I'm going, but you don't know where I come from or where I'm going. You judge by human standards. I judge no one. And that's honestly a tough text for me, where Jesus says, I judge no one. And some people will take that and use it as an idea that, well, Jesus is all loving and Jesus doesn't want anything bad to happen to anybody. And so just receive grace and be good and know that everything's all right and do whatever you want and just receive grace. But obviously, Jesus makes several other portions where he says, I am the judge. We find out that on the final day, at the judgment, in the end of everything as we know it, Jesus is the judge. He's the righteous judge. And so we will be judged by Jesus. But here he's saying, I judge no one. And the way that I read that and understand that, and you may want to study this out and see, like, is what Pastor's saying making sense? Or if I'm not your pastor, is what Joey's saying, does that make sense? Is that when he's there, just like how we read in verses 1 through 11 of John chapter 8, he's saying, no, where are your accusers? Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. And that's without her saying, oh, I'm so sorry. And the thief on the cross, what is the thief beside Jesus on the cross? The one who places his faith in Jesus. What does he do? All he does is say, you're the Son of God. Like, that's who you are. And then Jesus says, you'll be with me in paradise. Like, he's offering this forgiveness, but it's not him saying, well, first you have to do X, Y, Z. No, first he's offering forgiveness, and then you receive the forgiveness, and then we go from there. But anyway, so that's how I'm understanding it, how I'm reading this, is that Jesus is saying, I'm not judging yet. Right now, I've come to be that place of forgiveness. I've come to be that sacrifice. And the sacrificial lamb is not the one that is judging. The sacrificial lamb is the one who's supposed to be sacrificed to set you free from your sins. At that moment, he's also the priest. And the priest is not to judge you. The priest is to be the one who administers the sacrifice, to be in contact with God. And so that's how I'm reading this text. And then he says, and if I do judge, my judgment is true, because it is not I alone who judge, but I and the Father who sent me. Even in your law, it's written that the testimony of two witnesses is true. I am the one who testifies about myself, and the Father who sent me testifies about me. Then they asked him, where is your Father? And he says, you know neither me nor my Father. And that's a big claim, because he's saying his Father is God. And he's saying to these supposedly God-fearing people, you don't know him. You don't know God. You don't know the one that you're supposed to be giving your entire life for and your livelihood for. And then he says, he spoke these words by the treasury while teaching in the temple, but no one seized him because his hour had not yet come. Once again, looking at the sovereignty of God and the timing of God. But the gist of what Jesus is doing here when he's saying, there are two who are testifying. The Father is testifying on my behalf, and I'm testifying about me, and that's enough. Your law says that it's at the testifying of two witnesses, at least two witnesses. Well, I've got that. And really, he's breaking it down, and he's saying, I'm bigger than the law. I'm priority before the law. Like, the law says you need two who testify. Well, there are two who testify, and we're way bigger than the law. And so, what are you going to do? Like, I am the Son of God. God is my Father. I know him and you don't. And so another big day of big claims, another big day of them trying to trap Jesus, and another day of his hour is not yet here. And so you may be like, man, I feel like we're hearing that over and over and over again. The reason for that is because John has a purpose in writing the Gospel of John. And John wants you to know that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. In a world full of plural God religions, he's saying there's only one God, and that God was manifested in the person of Jesus. And so he's in a way proving, I mean, only God can prove himself, but in a way he's proving the existence that Jesus is the manifestation of God. That's his point, that's his purpose. That's why he says it over and over and over again. So, hope you're having an awesome day. Hope there weren't many buffering issues, as Vicky has now made me super, super nervous that there are. And if there are, I'll post the YouTube link, because obviously this will be a jumbled, nasty recording. So, we'll find out. God bless you guys. Have a wonderful day.